I forgot to hit go live on Twitch. On Twitch? On YouTube. Why do I have to hit that? Why? Can happen, I guess. Anyways, one day I am going to actually remember to also stream on set up the YouTube streaming. Anyway, let me get started. Let me, before I forget, share this stuff. Yeah, it's there. Let me play it here. Let me mute it here. Do I have desktop audio? I do. Amazing. Discord. Plus this. What do we even have to talk about today? Information. About colon information. True. Why did I get a ping? What happened? Let me. What am I looking for? This thing. Anyways, let me. Did I even activate the thing? I am amazing. I probably forgot. Did I activate the timer? I am incredible. I didn't forget about that. Wow. Cannot believe myself. I am amazed. I'm to my own capacities, I guess. Wow. Let me clear that. Wow. I am the best. I would say, yeah. And what am I looking for now? Something like this very same link, copy link, yeah. Now let me close you, let me put you here, and let me mute this thing here. Okay, there we go, that. And what's up with you? Why are you not on time? What's your problem? Wait. From the beginning, from the very end. Okay, I see. Can happen. So now it's actually set up. I love setting up. My favorite part out streaming is having to spend 20 minutes setting every single thing up. It's the best, actually. It's the most fantastic feature ever. Anyways, let me top chat. No, bro. Live chat. Wow. Okay, now yeah. Let me take an idle break. Why? It was like I was remembering. Why did I out of nowhere remember something along the lines of now we don't say idle break anymore? It was when I watched Gura, not Gura. Fuck, it wasn't Gura. It was Sava who said, "No, now we don't have to utilize euphemisms." That's where that thing came from. But sadly, I am not Gura. So we will euphemize our way to victory or something like that. Anyway, let me fucking leave. I am amazing. I am almost late. Why I have to leave? Anyways, here we are. We have this. What else am I missing? Uh, what am I missing? I'm missing something. Who knows? What? The actual. What? The actual beat for audio is 0? What do you mean? YouTube, what's up? Is there any audio whatsoever? Wait. Okay, no, there is audio. What the fuck was that warning, man? I guess something along the lines of whenever you are not using audio, the service, the script makes it basically not utilize any bandwidth. Why would it do that? Why would it choose to do that? Like, what's the point behind that? Who knows? Today, give me a second. Good morning. I forgot to set this thing up. This today part up. So today we're gonna be talking about climate change. No. I like because somebody who doesn't know why the fuck would that be funny would be like, what the fuck are we talking about? But no, yeah, today we're gonna be talking about information. As the title indicates, wow, amazing, incredible. Who could have predicted the title wasn't misleading at all? Wow, I feel honored because I'm not being misled. So, good morning. Today, yeah, this time around it has actually been a long time since the last time that I actually was here, so that's great, I guess. It is good to be back. It's always wonderful to be back. Now the state of the transmission is perfect. So I guess it's part of the experience or something. Who knows? Basically, who knows? Point being that, yeah, here we are. Something to add, something to really transmit of importance? I guess not really, not much has been happening behind the scenes, I guess. And yeah, today I can honestly say it's wonderful to have the possibility of being here, as always, live in its very basic form. It's one of the most wonderful things. I don't know, I haven't continuing to try to think out the notion of, the mere act of existence in itself is something to cherish. The possibility of being, the chance of staying alive is already wonderful enough to appreciate and feel thankful for, and that is already good enough, but also at the very same time unavoidably difficult to actually grasp in any manner. So here we are. The point is that here we are. Also, why do I keep pausing my why do I, or does this thing by itself keep pausing itself? Who knows? Can happen. Point being that, yeah. Good evening. Has been a long while. Has been a couple of days. And I don't know, what has happened recently? Nothing of importance. I have been continuing to study. So, in the whole process of going through stuff in general, I have found myself in the very same position of, you know what? Surprisingly enough, astonishingly enough, I have realized yet another thing. It's not. I don't really know if this is the kind of, not the kind of place, the kind of way in which you should try to utilize categories. The whole aspect of we always have the minor and major categories in terms of you have the minor realizations, like I don't know what's a minor realization. I need to highlight that's not a realization with a major realization in itself. It's a very basic one which you do or you experience every single time, you tend to realize this thing poses itself the moment I lose the focus. Okay, I see. Can I fix that in any way? Sorry, I'm getting surprised by mis errors in the functionality of things. I was saying that yeah, the whole aspect of realizations, it's you have the major and major and minor realizations. The issue is, or it's an elementary area. It's the whole aspect of you could try to classify them as such, and you could say, yeah, a major realization or a major breakthrough in terms of something that I have finally understood will be, I don't know, huge landmark in the development of human knowledge, like Darwin, for example, so something like that would be a major breakthrough, a realization in itself that constitutes something noticeable enough to change the course of life of anyone. I guess unaware, therefore, if you're trying to compare that to what I had, it will not at all be that kind of realization. It's something incredibly basic, I will say. It's something more like a collection of things, more like a collection of different notions all summed up into one singular piece of information that ties all of those together, I guess. Yeah. Point being, today we are here to talk about stuff, and we are. I don't think it is too much of a meta discussion in any way. It's more of just a simple. Yeah, why is it lying? It's a simple conversation about the whole thing of yeah, we have these different sorts of information and whatnot, and I guess why is this so badly lying, like dying because of lag? Actually, this is beautiful. Do you wanna stabilize, brother? Do you wanna work? Do you wanna function? Do you wanna die? You wanna die? You wanna die? Okay. Do you want or not to die? Don't keep me here guessing if you're going to work or not. Just decide to fully die or to fully work. What a wonderful machine. No, it's not the machine. It's the internet. The router, I guess, will be the problem, something like that. Can we die faster? Or OBS Studio disconnected? Indeed, brother, indeed. Very much indeed. Who could have predicted that? Disconnected? What? My entire reconnection successful. Okay. What's the problem now? Did my internet die? Perhaps. It doesn't seem to have died. What the fuck? It's okay, it's kinda lying, I guess. It said it worked. What's up? Are we back? No, right? We aren't really back, right? We cannot be. What? Okay, we are back, and I have no way of knowing. No, wait. We are only back on YouTube? What's up with this thing, brother? I have no clue what's going on. If I stop this, does anything change? I like not knowing. Today we are in the liminal space of me not getting at all to know. I am still live on YouTube for some reason. Did I ever... What? Okay, internet seems to be working. Did the YouTube stream ever die for some reason? Yeah, it never stopped. What? What a platform, man. Amazing. So, whatever. Twitch is unstable somehow. For some random reason. Was Twitch the problem? Is Twitch dying? Is Twitch... let me... Amazon servers... Status. Operation with multiple services. Yeah? Right now. Right now there are problems. March 3. It is. Today it's not 3. Unavoidably. So, what's up with this? Okay, whatever. It's gonna be weird as fuck to see that. And also, on for some reason it's unstable yet. Still, whatever you mean, man. Whatever you say, it's true. But I wanna assume that you're right in that sense. So, I was saying. Let me go back to what I was trying to say, trying to communicate. That yeah, I was literally just starting also, so yeah, nothing really lost there. Good enough. Okay, then let me recapitulate where I was. I was saying simply. Sorry for that, I guess. I should probably try to keep it written down somewhere. Like, okay, I can edit the description as we go. Amazing. Let me add it there. Okay, there we go. Saved like that. Ah, what a platform. I was saying then, continuing, that yeah, something that I have been trying to, this one wasn't really about something that I was thinking about directly, as in engaging with the idea by itself. I guess it was something more along the lines of, by having to approximate the question or being around the question itself of what is information and what we can classify as information and how can we, in any other part of the discussion as how do we learn and what do we learn and in which ways do we learn and what not. I have been around that topic coincidentally, let's say, and yeah, it has been something interesting in itself, I would say. Unavoidably something quite fulfilling is not the right word. Quite full in itself of answers that I wasn't really looking for. Not because I do not care for answers, but rather because they came out of nowhere in a way in which you yourself would be surprised at the amount of, once again, and completely unexpected discoveries and now plausible explanation for things. And because that happened in a way, I ended up choosing thinking that yeah, today we actually deserve to talk about that, because in the end, yeah, it is basically the very same thing. It's not the very same thing, but yeah, it's basically that more than anything else about the whole prospect of information in general, I guess, and all of those things. So now, actually, I guess that that's as always the preface. The proper discussion would start along the lines of, I don't know, I was the other day reading some stuff, and throughout all of the things that I happened to see, I encountered myself with, I guess, the recurrent question of, as always, how does the human being get to understand stuff? What is in itself the information that we absorb and such? And despite the more technical things like, yeah, in itself, anything that constitutes a unit of information is that piece of knowledge which can be transmitted to others, and that very same kind of information we might as well classify as usable and transmissible information because it can remain active in the whole aspect of the communications that happen between different people and such, and all of those things that are more on the technical side don't really, not that they don't matter, they just possess in themselves a little bit of a lesser importance when you compare the real meaningful thing that is, yeah, and you know what, surprisingly enough, information is, besides the, once again, the more rigorous definition, something that you can very well try to understand from the perspective of, and you know what, surprisingly enough, information is not so absent from the everyday aspects of existence, and it's, what is information? It is almost anything that we share between one another, and besides the most basic level of explanation, there is also the other layer of, and also unavoidably, it is the thing which we utilize to communicate with others. There is information instead of everything, but unavoidably, the thing that concerns most people is the rigorous or more precise kind of information that is the one that ends up being useful and foundational almost for the rest of our life, that allows us to basically transmit or keep evolving the different things and aspects of our very existence into even better ones, simply, yeah, into different ones. The whole aspect of if they are better or not is a different kind of judgment. The whole aspect of simply keep on transforming and reinventing what was our previous modes of existence. The whole aspect of that kind of information. Not, you can say, in the very same kind of explanation that I tried to utilize before, you can have either the explanations and the information itself, which is in its essence very basic, the whole aspect of, yeah, you can simply have, or yeah, simply put, the conversational information, the whole vapid discussions and chit chat that happens, and background things that you say when there is nothing really going on, which is in itself pretty meaningless. And you have that other kind of information, the other kind that lets you alter things in any kind of way, that allows for the transformation of your very existence in some way, shape, or form. That notion of information is the latter, basically, is what we are looking for the most whenever we try to think about it. And because that is so, it always ends up feeling like, in itself, we, the first time, I guess I will, yeah, trying to make it from my own personal viewpoint. The first time you're confronted from the analysis of, yeah, I have to obtain information from the world. Not only this, way too much of an overwhelming notion that you will now have to learn everything, but also it always is, I guess, not covered exactly, but more along the lines of encapsulated in this weird way of speaking about it of, yeah, you know what, this thing is, I needed to get to information. I don't get to know how. I don't get to know in which way. I don't know exactly even what sometimes constitutes information. And that is in itself, let's say like this, as long as the person lives confined to its very own existence, information is always going to be limited. The way in which we transmit and we talk out these very same things is always confined to the understanding that we possess. Let's say like this, any kind of notion as in information in this case being used interchangeably, any kind of notion of that kind, or of any kind, sorry, would require previous foundations that would allow any person to place them on, once again, in such a way that all the things get to make any sense. As long as there is an understanding of what the thing is, the information gets absorbed. The issue is, because this is such a wide notion, it's complicated to understand what we understand and what we do not understand. The whole aspect of it's whenever you learn about information, you always have to regard the whole Dunning-Kruger study and whatnot. The whole aspect of yeah, when you don't know that you don't know, therefore you believe that you know more than what you actually know, and because you are incapable of knowing how much you do not know, therefore you also overestimate your performance in any given task, which requires the usage of said absent knowledge, and whenever you know too much, you might also be incapable of understanding actually how much you might truly not know, so you sometimes get to misjudge the way in which you will utilize the knowledge which you already possess. There is only in the states in which you are an absolute master of the knowledge which you possess, which is a synonym for master, the complete dominance of the knowledge of the information which you handle inside of yourself. Only once that happens, you are capable of actually utilizing that in any meaningful manner, and therefore also allowing the very same knowledge which you tried to showcase, to utilize, to be not just displayed, but also, yeah, efficiently utilized in the corresponding tasks, basically. The whole aspect of, once again, only once you master something, you can fully utilize it to the best of your capacities. Until that happens, you will always be on the blur of, yeah, I don't really know. I don't really possess any complete awareness of how much I can actually do something or not. And the point in itself is, any kind of piece of knowledge always relies on other given things that allow it to be integrated. At this point already, there is something incredibly important here already, and that is the very same notion of, and you know what? Something incredibly funny that gets absolutely ignored. I hate when that happens. You can understand things. Why do we memorize things? Why is memory such a functioning factor for people? You can memorize sentences. The structure that holds language inside of itself is to some degree quite different from the structure that makes any other piece of information operational. Let's say you can understand what the sentence, or how to express the sentence, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but you do not have the capacity to understand what it contextually means, what it actually does in terms of, okay, do you even know what is a mitochondria? Can you even demonstrate what it is? Can you, what the fuck is even a cell? Do you even understand that or not? You can semantically be capable of memorizing something without possessing or without accessing the functional aspect of the information in itself. And already at that point, there is something, the importance in that alone is that unavoidably, the moment in which you get to understand that you can believe that you have learned something simply because you have acquired the capacity to replicate the sentence which contains the notion, the moment in which that happens is the moment in which you finally also acquire the capacity to, in itself, operate more directly in the things that you try to do, as in whenever you try to collect information, you now, let's say, possess the capacity to assess. If you are just accessing the semantic knowledge, as in, once again, you understand the sentence, grammatically speaking, you can replicate the text that you have read, or if you understand the notions, the ideas contained within the sentence, and you have therefore unavoidably acquired the knowledge hidden within that very same piece of information. That already is an incredibly, not just important, but down to the very core of the nature of information, necessary piece to be capable of understanding. And I was trying to go back to where that particular notion came from. Before that, let me drink something. Because we have these very same notions, because we have these very same pieces of awareness and such, it ends up therefore happening that unavoidably, and surprisingly enough, when we are, I wouldn't say confronted, when we are just given the possibility to realize, and when we are given the possibility to deal with those pieces of knowledge, it is that we acquire also the capacity to transmit and give it to others, basically. It's, I would say, yeah, also something very basic in its nature, that now not only do you understand it, but you can also replicate that very same information for others. Now, that's something incredibly basic in terms of yeah, this whatever happens with everyone and whatnot. So that's, until here, that's the most given basic notions, no? That yeah, to understand things you actually need to get everything. The whole, there is a theory behind it. I don't even remember the names. If you look it up after I will give you the whole concept. If you look it up, the whole concept is encapsulated within other theories, but the concept not just of modularity, but also of, because you're capable of realizing that you are trying to understand something, and because you're also trying to make it apparent that you have absorbed those pieces of knowledge, you are now operating in the realm of, I myself need to first get everything before I finally can move towards the wholeness of the notions that I want to absorb. Information is always built on the basis of other pieces of already understood information. What I said before, what I explained so far. You cannot understand something absolutely out of nowhere. There is parenthesis here for the case of, yeah, but I had a sudden realization. The whole aspect of the unconscious mind and how you keep processing things while you're working in your default mode network, and you're thinking unconsciously without realizing that you are doing so. That doesn't really need to get here particularly considered. That's way too much of an, not, I wouldn't say advanced, but a rather hyper-specific notion, way more modern than what we can realize. The whole aspect of how you, just to mention it more appropriately, since I did mention it, there is what, it's not so much of a theory at this point in time. When you realize that you get to understand things without actually, or without actively being in the act of thinking about them, and because this has happened so much throughout time, it is that we have tried to understand how it happens. And inside of the brain, there is this whole area of neurons and whatnot that participate in the acquisition of knowledge from a personal point of view, so that while you are doing the rest of your existence, they still keep triggering, albeit unconsciously for you. And because this whole process happens inadvertently, you keep on, so to speak, having in the background of your mind those thoughts that allow you to then get the other notions that you're looking for. And because this happens so consistently, then it is that you finally acquire not just the capacity, but also the benefit of, and you know what? Now I am properly understanding things. And that's what in more modern theories gets encapsulated or mentioned as also the modularity and the whole aspect of, because we ourselves have this unconscious mind, but that is far more superstitious or mythical in terms of, your unconscious side, it tries to be captured as the unconscious, what was it? I just mentioned it's something about the network, the natural network or something like that, basically, in which the pattern in which the neurons themselves activate so that you can, once again, keep processing information without you being conscious of it. Point is, that's a little bit later on the development of notions of this whole kind, I guess. The main piece of knowledge lies in, we are so far capable of learning about this stuff, and we are so far, therefore, capable of processing everything. So as long as we got the previous lessons, that much is obvious enough. That much is unavoidably why the whole educational system is built in the way in which it is. You aren't just given random pieces of information. You have always, contextually speaking, there is something incredibly underappreciated, and that is, just as I mentioned before, you can sometimes obtain information by association of things. The very same way in which when you try to show a kid something like the abstract concept of a number, you need to associate physical representations so that they can later on mutate or transmit the notion of the physical real thing into the abstract notion that you're trying to create, so to speak. A real example would be when you're trying to teach a kid numbers, you need to give it a physical object so that it can visualize what is a number in its very visual sense. After getting to do that, you can therefore continue developing any other notion more properly by the process of extrapolating the given notions with the proper guidance of what is it that you should be trying to see, to understand, so that you can therefore finally move on to the more complicated aspects of the information itself that you're trying to absorb. This matters because in many cases it happens also that something that I absolutely hate, you get told that some things are impossible to get no matter what. That's not the case. Sometimes the issue is you cannot find good enough examples to extrapolate the information. Is it that wild of an option? Unavoidably, because we are, conceptually speaking, the difference between you and kid in terms of the knowledge that the both of you possess about astrophysics might as well be zero in the very field, in the very specific field of astrophysics. That's why it's necessary for the both of you to possess proper enough examples to be capable of slowly getting to the basis of the knowledge, of the information, so that you can later on be capable of moving to higher echelons and higher, more complicated states of that very same kind of information. And because this message is not explained enough, something wonderful that happens is you don't understand why you yourself are not capable of getting some information that otherwise gets classified as absolutely simple, as totally basic to get. It's just a different method of saying what I explained before, or a more complicated manner of seeing it. You need the basis to understand the more complicated forms, and when you don't even possess the basic forms of information to keep on developing on them, you need to rely on the already existing foundations that are on the very grounds of your notions, which, once again, sometimes are found in the most basic senses. You can understand what is an apple, and you can arrive from the notion of an apple into what is the proper concept of gravity, and from that you can keep on developing the concept of gravity into how that applies in the space, and from that you can finally reach the astrophysics themselves. But to do all of that, you need to go step by step. It cannot happen that out of nowhere you're capable of getting the notions simply because somebody told them to you. The whole concept of intuitiveness is based on the personal capacities of every single individual. That applies a lot more in terms of, some things are far easier for you to get than others, but that doesn't really modify the necessity for anyone to actually get those things in general, or to, once again, to have the foundations to keep on developing themselves. So, with the very same notion explained and complicated already, we have to fucking move on. Sorry. That is still basic. Because the concept that I was trying to reach was, okay, now that this is explained, we can properly talk about modernity. Something wonderful that I have encountered, therefore, is, even in nowadays landscape of ideas and incredibly complicated notions that surround us and that populate the, what's the word, mainstream discourse and whatnot, even with all of those things being stated, it is still possible for us to rely on those very same, almost at this point eternally standing notions of, I need to build up these things so that I can later on, from those things, move on to different stages, and from those degrees of notions, from those layers of awareness, from those layers of realization, I can then finally allow myself to progress to even better and even further modes of knowledge. Once again, the issue is, because this doesn't get at all said, people lose the capacity to get that, and you know what? I can actually learn stuff. This is where the issue, the very first issue in modern times happens. We paint the picture as if things were completely incomprehensible. It's absolutely disgusting. I can say right now, the way in which we treat any kind of information, the way in which we talk about such notions, the way in which we like to say that the knowledge is so, not exactly forbidden, but rather hidden behind the doors, behind closed doors and whatnot. The methods which are utilized to make it look like, you know what, you're trying to learn something. You're only wasting your time because things are impossible to get. You need to possess a magical quality almost to be capable of getting anything, you know? And
Lloyd family.
thank you, Flower, for the resubscription. Also, 5 months, it's a lot, thank you. It has been almost half a year, actually. I hope you're doing well. I was in... yeah. The issue is, picture that gets painted is somehow information in itself is truly impossible to access. In, I guess, the proper message or the notion that is hidden behind that is unavoidable in current times. Many of the things that we talk about are quite convoluted in nature. All of the things that we are doing nowadays require way more time for anyone to actually get, so that you can then utilize the information that you already possess to be capable of operating in the landscape of things that happen right now. In a way, it's, how do you keep, I guess a real example would be something like AIs, no? It's something incredibly modern in itself, no? So you cannot really say that it's, we can say ourselves, if we understand it, that it's simple, but to be capable of arriving at the awareness or at the piece of information that is an artificial intelligence, we already have to possess the other notions of, to begin with anything, what is a computer, what are computational systems, what are the ways in which those things operate, what are, you can keep on deepening in itself. You can say that you get what an AI is. Do you understand the different nodes that work so that it generates those quote-unquote ideas, the different ways in which different AIs are capable of producing the answers and such? The issue is to believe that information is something easily accessible. It's accessible, but the easy part is almost never present, because the issue behind that very same problem is that, you know what? You're actually good at something. You're actually going to be capable of getting this without any other prior context. In present days, there is almost no notion that exists in the void of itself. There is no thing that relies on no other knowledge. You can, one of the many problems of this notion is, and even the things that try to be original are inspired by other things, so that you can, in many instances, understand something, even if, let me say like this, I can tell you that what I am talking about is original, and I can fully believe it. I can be 100% convinced that what I am saying is my own thing. Issue is, the moment in which I realize that what I am saying also possesses the discourses of others that informed what I am saying, I have to accept that I am not really absolutely original, and any other person who also went through the whole effort of, I know that this guy read these things before talking here. I can see from where this thing is coming, actually, and I can see which things informed the theory that they are utilizing for themselves. There is almost, that's the issue with all of this, there is almost no existing theory that has no other point of access, and the way in which many, I don't even know exactly what to blame besides the thing that people say. Who says it? In which context does that get said? The whole aspect of things are simple to get, you just have to try hard enough. Okay, but what is the problem of, from where did that notion appear? When did we start to believe that things never needed any other piece of information to be understood? Be it whatever. The conclusion is that, basically, in the present day, everything is, any piece of information is informed by other things. Therefore, it is impossible to access any current piece of discussed information without previously having developed all the other notions, much less to talk about any other hyper-specific notion like those that exist inside of the places like jobs or like professions or even hobbies nowadays have become incredibly complicated. Even wanting to play something like a MOBA requires you to learn all the ways in which you have to itemize yourself and all the strategies that you have to follow and all the things that you know are meta and all this stuff. Any piece of information is built upon other layers of it. The issue is that sometimes we're capable of seeing it and following it properly, rapidly, and at other times we struggle far more than what is actually necessary. Because, once again, the sole idea is that you don't need to rely on anything else. You will get whatever you are looking for. You will get it without any other effort whatsoever. You will just one day become capable of getting whatever you are looking for. You need nothing to be capable of realizing it. You will just get it out of nowhere. No, that doesn't happen suddenly. Okay, that's the very fittest stop that I had in mind. Something else. The second part is, and sadly, not only is it the present thing that you know what, I'll things are so easy to get. Nothing needs me to actually try. I am capable of getting whatever I want out of nowhere. On one hand, that happens. On the other, one of the things that also prompted me to talk about this was, I don't know if it is the realization, it was just the conversation of, I hate not getting things. I hate not being capable of understanding what's going on. As somebody who has to go to university, I have found myself in the position many times of, wow, it's horrifying the amount of things that my professors assume I know without me ever being capable of understanding. And I never possessing the capacity, me myself, never possessing the capacity to absorb that very same knowledge. And the assumption that knowledge in itself is impossible to access, that some things you just get or don't. And in that, or hidden inside of that, was that I realized, and you know what? There is also something incredibly funny. Sometimes I can actually get stuff. I don't struggle as much. I just need to do the work of trying to get it. Oh my god, I have to spend 10 hours studying. Wow. So sad to have to spend 10 hours studying for me to finally get a concept. It's something that happened. It's also, I guess you can say it in the whole, one of the most basic methods of discussing it will be, in the society of comfort, what happens most of the time is that we are told that things will get to be immediate always. One of the most excruciatingly difficult parts of absorbing knowledge in itself, of getting any piece of information, lies behind the sphere of, you need to integrate it with everything else that you do, and the process of accommodating what you're absorbing into the already existing structures of what you understood takes not only effort, not just an immediate effort, but a lot of struggle and reaccommodation of both the new and older pieces in the whole symphony of knowledge that you possess inside of your mind. And the issue with that is the society of comfort. That cannot really happen that much. You cannot spend 10 hours reading stuff because you can remain on the comfort of your own existence, doing something else, anything else, doesn't even matter what. And you can enjoy far more doing that than trying to, in this case, I don't know, spend 10 hours reading something like what is the modern philosophical ideas present in or influencing the current events and affecting the current things that happen in this world and whatnot. But the notion is incredibly basic, yeah. Nowadays, many things are possible to get. The issue is, we don't want to do that. There is, in the very same way in which I compare it with the whole notion of the pharmaceutical conception of the world or conception of health, the very same way in which we are told that, yeah, you know what, take this wonderful pill, you're going to get healed so well, without any other work behind that, without any other act of resolution of the problems, like, proper example, take this pill, you will make your swollen leg not be damaged anymore. Okay, you fix that. You fix the problem. But you don't fix the cause. You don't understand that the person might as well. It's an example. Obviously, it's somewhat absurd. Might as well be hitting their leg every single fucking day that they wake up, you know? Do you actually solve the problem? No, you just address the problem itself. You don't address what causes the problem. Same thing happens with, yeah, we believe that there is the possibility for you to be told one notion or by someone, by a magical person, somebody who is good enough that they will, in one sentence, inherit the knowledge to you. When that doesn't happen, that doesn't happen really. It's, I don't want to blame anyone, but the way in which stuff like an aphorism inside of philosophy makes it work inside of the mind of the person of, yeah, these different meanings that coexist behind what is being said allow the person to get the thing, the much more wider notion by simply possessing inside of itself all the different facets of the idea that is being spoken about. That makes it so that any single person who tries to, in any way whatsoever, get something, believe that, yeah, I might as well just try once to get it, and if I don't get it at the first time, at the first try there, therefore I'm absolutely incapable of getting anything of this sort. And the whole conclusion of unavoidably, I am also a brute because I don't get what I'm trying to learn. And that whole notion of, yeah, knowledge is inherited incredibly fast is utterly damaging. I already mentioned that sometimes it's incredibly strange the way in which we have liked to say or to think that, yeah, it's fine. For me, it's incredibly fine to not spend some couple of hours trying to actually get these things. And I will hinder my own existence by making sure that I never get this notion. Instead of, that's the problem with this. I will hinder my entire existence by not trying to get something that will keep reappearing throughout the rest of my very own existence, because to acquire that piece of information takes 10 hours of my life. Oh no, I cannot believe it. I will rather remain in pain for the next 30 years of my life and unavoidably at the very bitter end take my own life instead of trying to do the process of getting the other notions. Wow, so amazing, so wonderful the way in which And once again, my blame. I decided to place the blame on that very same notion of, and you know what? You are being told that it is fine for you to try it once and give up. To believe that, yeah, you will get things instantaneously. You don't even need to read a book. You will hear a sentence, somebody will give you a magical sentence, and by the power of the spirits, it will be embedded on you all the knowledge that allows you to operate within your own existence. No, doesn't happen, won't happen. Sadly, we still require lots of efforts to actually get things. But that's the problem. You say that you might as well not even need to specify anything else. And I am incredibly angry at that. You can spend enough time and things become incomprehensible. Sometimes things are beautifully comprehensible, so long as you're capable of doing the process of exploring the things that explain the pieces of information that you are trying to get. It's incredibly. Now that I try to grasp this a little bit more, I understand that something else that also happens in the common discourse. I have heard so many times, oh yeah, you know what, this author is impossible to get. You know what, this person is impossible to get. You know what, these notions are impossible to get. You're trying to learn out this kind of idea. You're trying to utilize your time to learn out this thing. You are not going to get. What the fuck? Who are you to tell me what I'm going to get or not? Do you even know how I operate? Parenthesis on all of that. Have you actually tried to explore the people that explains the things? Or are you just lecturing me on something that you failed to get? Are you speaking from your failure, or are you speaking from absolute experience of, yeah, I did go for 20 hours exploring what was being said, and then I got what was being talked about? Or the wonderfulness of the society of commodity and the commodification of every single piece of thing. I watched a 20 minutes long video and I expected to get it. I watched a quick summary by fucking AI and I didn't get the idea, but it was the problem of the author, not the problem of my method. Never in my whole life my methods were wrong. The proper point that I'm trying to make, without so much bitterness, is that, yeah, in reality, many times it happens that the author is actually quite understandable. Astoundingly understandable. Beautifully understandable. The issue is to have the patience to explore them. And I cannot for the life of mine emphasize enough, yeah. As long as you keep building the things that make sense, as long as you are, I guess, I don't like the term humbleness, it's just reasonable enough to see that, yeah, I cannot get the modern philosophical landscape without having understood all the other things that they are reliant on to compose their theories. If you are trying to do such an endeavor, to be capable of possessing that degree of realism with these other things do not exist on the word of themselves. I can progress a little bit more, far more properly, as long as I get the things. And I also possess. It's not about you will 100% do it. You just need to try sometimes. The necessity to be capable of going towards the effort of seeing if you actually get it. It's horrible the way in which you are so capable of not only discovering ourselves. I can contend, accept, and deal with the very own problem of being my biggest problem in itself, of being the person who discourages myself from doing anything. I can live with that my entire life. But that the rest of the world is hindering me in efforts that I try to take in anything, that the very world in which I inhabit, the very people with which I communicate, tells me things that end up damaging the way in which I live my own life. That's far more difficult to accept. Because that's the point of, yeah, you're gonna be told that some things are impossible to get. You stay with what you are being told, and you will discover something wonderful, that you will abandon way too many things that, in essence, might as well be absolutely understandable, so long as you actually tried to do it. But, once again, it's your reliance on I. If I don't know how much of a proper show this is, but I can give you a quick explanation. Unavoidably, as much as I am told that sometimes some pieces of information are quite inaccessible in themselves, it also happens that since I was little, I was also told that very same thing. And at that time, it might have been absolutely true. At that time, my family might have been absolutely correct that, yeah, I was a kid, a 9-year-old kid. I might as well have been incapable of getting anything like the way in which atom bombs are created, the way in which, I don't know, molecular biology happens. Understandable enough. It's difficult to access those pieces of knowledge, but it doesn't mean that it is in itself impossible. There is an insurmountable gap between difficult and impossible, and the way in which most people see it is as either you can or you can't, and it relies far more on the logical gate of, okay, have you understood all of these other notions that inform the thing that you're actually trying to get or not? If you get everything else, as in, there is a certain checklist of notions that you have to get, that you have to possess before progressing any further. Do you have them or not? If you have them, you can continue progressing in your explorations of knowledge. If you don't, you have to step back, pull them, and continue progressing. But sometimes, many times, it happens that the message that we receive is, yeah, you're never going to get this thing. You're never going to be capable of doing anything about this field of knowledge. You're never going to be good at this kind of information. You're never going to explore it in a way in which you're capable. And I already covered myself when I mentioned them before. I covered the base of, yeah, you have some degrees of intuition and some degrees of expertise and capacity and whatnot. Those only affect the degree to which you can more rapidly or slowly explore things. It doesn't affect the whole capacity that you have, so to speak. And I don't know, okay, there is unavoidably the obvious case of some things. Some people with, compared to the average person, might not be capable of exploring other concepts, but those are the cases in which there are developmental problems in terms of, unavoidably, my brain doesn't function well enough to even be capable of retaining memories, new memories, You cannot create new memories, you cannot consolidate new pieces of information in your brain. You cannot develop anything, therefore, wow. Is that really surprising? Is that really something that deserves that much of an awareness? As long as things keep making sense for you, you're capable of progressing forward. That's the wonderfulness of absorbing something about, yeah, there are these people that have problems. Is that out of nowhere, because the brain has that negativity bias, you might as well also try to see in which ways you might as well also be impeded from absorbing new information yourself, which doesn't really need to be the case, and which doesn't really need to be the way in which you will ever operate. Sometimes, and surprisingly enough, in the current landscape, or in the current society, it can happen that you can live your entire life without having as many problems. As long as you try to keep yourself healthy, you might as well not have so many issues, unsurprisingly enough. So, if that happens, if you allow that to occur, then you can also have the possibility of, yeah, and you know what? You might as well also enjoy the benefit of continuing to learn stuff, even if you are 50, even if you are 70, even if you are 90. But do not take care of all the other things and see what happens. See if you're going to be capable of understanding anything else whatsoever. Now, give me a second. I need to drink something. Because, yeah, I would stuck on that last point, I guess. So, yeah, let me see. Where do we continue from after that? Okay. I have to accept something. Or I have something. I have something to continue from. I don't know why I said I have to accept something. Sorry. That was an unnecessary sentence. I was saying that, yeah, something that happens. We lagged for 0.5% of this second transmission. It's so over. I was saying that one of those other things that happens is the process of, and besides the things that I know, the things that I get to realize and what's not, besides all of that, there are these other notions that are going back to what is inaccessible, no? There are some pieces of information that are unobtainable. There are caveats. In that case, there are caveats. It is true that some things are unavoidably unobtainable. Like, oh yeah, you are trying to find out secrets from your very own government. Perhaps you're not going to be capable of accessing that kind of information unavoidably. You are not going to be capable of getting something so well hidden like that, but something else far more understandable or far more normalized in terms of disgust might as well be accessible. The issue is, as much as there is a whole process of going through the wholeness of the information to get it, going through the process of finding out how to access it, something, on one hand, it is incredibly tedious. That much is true, and it should be absolutely necessary. Information should be far more accessible, far more quickly accessible, in terms of the accessibility to the things that allow you to get informed. That's what I'm calling about. That's what I'm talking about. Because there are some things that can let you get what you're looking for. As long as we're talking still out information that allows you to live your life in altered ways, so to speak. Things that let you progress in the ways in which you are trying to by absorbing those very same pieces of information. What happens inside all of that is, I needed to find out what I might need to explore, and after getting that much, I also need to see where is the next place for me to go. And both of those things are incredibly difficult. Unavoidably, in the end, because there is also the complication of, and you know what? You're trying to get something that you're trying to obtain a piece of information that is very, I wouldn't say kept hidden, but rather very difficult to obtain without rapidly getting rid of something like, for example, one of the many books that I had to read, I could rapidly get it by paying like $50, or and that's the worst part. You can even get absolutely legally some things for free, but you have to go through the whole process of, you have to find out where is an alternative source, how much of an actually reliable source that place is, if the thing that you're getting is the proper one in terms of information sometimes, because at this point in time also we have so many things that are similar in name. Sometimes you might as well be getting something with the very same name by the very same author, and in the end the information itself is totally different. Why? Because it can still be changed, modified based on the random off chance of, and you know what happened? It still got named the same by two people with the very same name, and it happened that you chose incorrectly. Or it's not that you chose incorrectly. There was no way for anyone to understand which one was the correct one. So you just guessed wrong. And now you have to go back and find again the piece of information that you're looking for. But it doesn't mean that it is inaccessible. Even then, it isn't inaccessible. Most literature that allows people to understand more difficult notions are accessible. And sometimes it's just a matter of how much is one willing to actually try to get it? How much is one willing to obtain the information so that they can explore it by themselves? In terms of, once again, you're trying to get a book. How much are you actually determined to get a book? The whole aspect of, for example, something like Google has the incredibly quick access of, you can type the name, then after searching for it, you can go to the section of PDFs, and if it isn't present there, you give up instantaneously. What a wonderful way of living life. What an incredible degree of uninterestedness that one has about those things. Unavoidably, one doesn't get things if at the very first sight of a difficulty we give up. Wow, amazing, astonishingly amazing, you know? But yeah, point is, sometimes, nowadays, there is also the necessity to understand that sometimes information is accessible. The issue is to actually try to access it. It isn't really about, I cannot ever get it, I cannot ever access it myself. No. And surprisingly enough, you can access it, you can obtain it, and you can make use of it. But you actually need to go for it. If you don't go for it, if you don't try to get this information, it won't just fall in front of you so that you can finally get it and whatnot, you know? That's another layer of the issue. Is there yeah, there has to be something else. I have to keep thinking. Give me a second. And I don't know. I've been absolutely surprised by all of this stuff. It's incredible to see how much sometimes we're not just unwilling, but also incredibly incapable of even wanting to find out about this stuff. Sometimes there is this other layer of when we try to get things, when we try to learn how to stuff. Sometimes you can just have this is a form a little bit more psychological concept of frictions and whatnot, of personal frictions. Sometimes I don't know what could be a good example. I have been told my entire life that the world was one way. I find out once I live life, once I have to be by myself, that the world might as well be a different way. The moment in which I have to confront those two things, I might as well feel incapable of accepting that the world is a different way. I might absolutely reject the information, even if I am being shown that it is a certain other way. The capacity to adapt and the capacity to be capable of fitting those contradicting viewpoints is a. There is a particular theory that even calls it one of the most fundamental capacities for any human being to be capable of living in the current world, where their knowledge in itself has become so fleeting, so transitory that today we can say that something is a certain way, tomorrow we can wake up and by the pure process of continuous investigation discover that it is absolutely wrong what we thought yesterday, so we have to change it. The capacity to also fit into the models of the world those pieces of information that alter the way in which we conceive everything are not only necessary and useful, but absolutely necessary. Yeah. No, I'll say necessary. Absolutely fundamental for the capacity of anyone to keep on processing stuff in itself. There is no capacity to process information if you cannot. It's in itself is incredibly basic, but it's the whole aspect of yeah, you know what? You're trying to get something, but the issue is that what you are trying to get might as well be impossible to fully get if, in the process of doing so, you are forgetting that the information that you are trying to fit might be different from the thing that you understood when you believed that you understood it before. If you cannot do the process of replacing what you understood, if you cannot do the process of accommodating, readjusting, and whatnot, any piece of notion, you cannot progress towards anything else. But that's, once again, that's sort of basic. That's not really that much of an awareness, of a notion, of an anything. It's in its very nature, very, very, very simple. And it's just that yeah, to fit things, you need to be capable of changing the current mold that one possesses. But I don't think it's that surprising, really. It's the common conclusion of, yeah, things, let's say like this, sometimes we can think that things are a certain way until we can finally find out what they truly are. And in the moment in which we find out what they truly are, it is also necessary for us to be capable of accepting that what we found out now is not only different, but might as well be the true thing instead of what we used to think before. And unless we can do that whole process, there is no acceptance of any notion whatsoever. that's as much of a necessary step for the acquisition of any piece of knowledge. But once again, it's eternally surprising. I don't think so. I wouldn't call it so myself. So, that's that. Is there anything else? I don't really know. I don't think so. Really. I would need to think. Okay, you know what? We're gonna take a tiny break. I will try to think what else I'm missing. And yeah. Try to induce the whole door frame effect or whatever. What's the name? Is it a door frame? It's not a door frame. Doorway. Aha, exactly. So yeah, give me a little bit basically. We will be right back in, I don't know, 2 minutes or so. I will go stretch, and after that we will see. If not, we'll see what happens after that, I guess. What's up? I did remember some stuff, so I'm back. Eh, I didn't change. I just updated the scene. I am amazing. Okay, there we go. Now I changed. I was saying that I wasn't really saying anything. Sorry, I'm crazy. Now I am saying that one of the few things that has happened that I remembered was basically yeah, and you know what? And surprisingly enough, in this world, it also happens that we are most of the time also told that yeah, you know what? It's sort of for you impossible to actually obtain anything, obtain anything refreshing, so to speak. It's the whole notion of in a let me set this. Okay, something along the lines of the way in which we, not currently so much, but relying on those older structures of philosophical discourse and whatnot, whenever we talk about people like the sophists and whatnot, you remember those, the people who make good arguments in theory, like, yeah, those things sound plausible enough, they are not really that true. One of those very same arguments is, but in itself, information is utterly inaccessible because in the end, you just waste so many efforts trying to understand something that is still incomprehensible in essence, because the proper notion that you are aspiring to get is abstract still. You are only going around in circles trying to learn about something, while the essence of the thing still remains hidden away from you. One of the that is okay, let's say like this. That was absolutely true. That was correct. Long ago. The issue is nowadays, the same way in which I explained before, we have enough information for many things, we have enough awareness about many, yeah, much stuff, and we have many degrees of notions that can affect the way in which we interact with the world in a fundamental level. Because all of that is true, one of those things that also happens is that sadly, we have lost the capacity to get that, yeah, and you know what? You can also actively work in not just getting, but exploring the things, the information that you're trying to obtain, discover even new information, the whole aspect of it's possible to also participate in the discovery of information. But the important to address the claim, quote unquote, is that sadly you can go in circles. That is true. Even today you can go in circles about this stuff so long as you, it's sort of what I said before, if your assumptions make you believe that you understand something without you truly possessing an awareness about the thing which you're exploring, you are then going to commit the mistake of believing that you have understood what's the point that you are exploring. And at that point, the very essence of the notion is inaccessible, but that was true 1,000 years ago and will remain true 1,000 years from now, because that is not a problem that happens at an objective level. That is a subjective issue of, yeah, I can myself never get something if I don't allow myself to actually get the point, so to speak, be it for whatever reason. But at current times, the ideas which we possess, the information which is existent, is accessible enough. The issue is, once again, to be capable of getting there, to actually do something with it. Otherwise, it will still remain enigmatic to us, which doesn't really need to be the case, but we will rather keep it under those characteristics than to be capable of realizing, of doing something that possesses its own worth by ourselves and such, and that's where the problem resurfaces, basically, when we believe that we have something, and when we believe that we have gotten a way of exploring a notion without actually doing so, without actually having anything that works in the process of us getting there. That's something. That's one thing. And another thing is in a similar line of, but nowadays there is an overload of information. It will be impossible for anyone to get every single thing that exists in the world. While that is true, is it truly necessary to get everything? Sometimes it's easy to forget, to ignore the all-encompassing meaning of everything. Do you truly get what everything means? I don't really want to get stuff, everything, as in stuff about the life of someone who I will never meet, who I have never met, and who had zero impact on my existence. I don't need to know about every single person. I don't need to know about all the social events that happened, all the historical events that occurred. I don't need to know everything. Unless, oh yeah, but you're being way too literal. When I say everything, I don't mean everything. I mean only everything as in so far as I'm talking about this field of knowledge. Okay, that's absolutely different. That might as well be true. In a way in which we go back to what I mentioned before of some things are wide enough, but there is another issue here. Sometimes, in many places, there is enough information so that we could actually get everything, so long as the person is capable of actually understanding all the information present on it. There is the myth that things are way more complicated. What I explained before. I can hear that somebody says that it is far more difficult than what it actually is in its essence. By believing that what somebody tells me about the things, I form my judgment, and sometimes, if I do so for prolonged enough periods of time, I can unavoidably hinder my processing of things myself. And in doing so, I end up harming my goals, harming my project of obtaining any piece of information. And if the point is to quote unquote get everything, unavoidably to have those biases makes the goal itself unattainable. But otherwise, to be capable of seeing that sometimes, despite what others describe as impossible, by experiencing the things, by trying to absorb the information itself, oneself, it is that we actually find out if it truly is impossible to access or not. Because sometimes it really is not impossible to get. There is a desire to make it look like it is impossible to obtain. But in reality, it doesn't really have to be that way. In reality, it might as well be of a different nature. The problem is that sometimes there are way too many stories told about these things that make it look like there is no solution whatsoever for these problems. Once again, leaving the whole notion of, yeah, but you're talking about this very method or this very particular field in specifics or not. Things, even nowadays, we're still in a point in history in which there is not enough to occupy the whole existence of anyone. You, as long as things make sense for you, you can keep on exploring and there is an end point to reach. The problem, I say that words are incredibly easy to pronounce. Any kind of word, any kind of sentence is incredibly simple to say. The meaning behind them is far more difficult. I can tell you that it is possible to get every single knowledge out of philosophy. What it actually takes is a completely different thing. How much time are you willing to sacrifice to get all the notions that exist within philosophy? Because if you are going to do that, you might as well need to spend the next 80 years of your life constructing all the knowledge that exists about these things. And that might as well take decades, might as well take almost the entirety of your existence. It is possible to get everything. Information is still accessible, and even if you want to understand everything, you might as well do so. But it comes with a price. That's the problem. And once again, I say it easily enough. It is. Words are fantastical because, once again, I might as well believe that I get what they mean without doing so fully. How much does it actually take in terms of sacrifice to reach the end point? That's a little bit more complicated to answer. But yeah, those I don't know. Any other point? I don't really think there is much else to say, I guess. I can only think out those two, I guess. Let me hire it before saying anything else. Before regretting my own words. Regretting. Sing anything? I didn't say sing anything. What the fuck? And is life only about acquiring information? Unavoidably not, but it also is not about only living in the present, sometimes. Okay, you can say it like that. There is such an issue with the way in which, at some point in life, it must have happened that we had issues because people got too centered on only acquiring notions, living in the fantastical land of ideas unavoidably without actually living a reality. The whole process of, yeah, you're spending too much time reading books. Balance in life is possible, but that is the very same thing with anything, It's it's the same thing as being a functional human being. Even the process of acquiring information can become a vice unavoidably, but just like any other, you can either balance it or not. You can either balance the acquisition of knowledge or not. You can either balance the way in which your relationship with food or not. You can either. Is it balance? I guess unavoidably. To keep the sentence, the string of sentences similar. You can balance things like drugs or not. Unavoidably, I guess, caveat, probably the best balance is to abstain. But that is balance because you're not hurting yourself. But yeah, point is, balance is the question of, yeah, it's so meaningless to have so much information. Not really. To live an entire life, very eternal notion of, yeah, to live an examined life is perhaps one of the greatest pains to ever go through. It's not really necessary to make things harder on oneself because we were told that it was difficult to do these things. Difficulty can pay out properly, incredibly well, even. The issue is to get to do that, to get why it is necessary to do that, and also to get to do it ourselves. But efforts possess an importance behind themselves. The issue is to see why it is that they have it at all, or not, I guess. Anything else? I don't think so. I don't know, I think I already, yeah. Just in case, perhaps. It's something that I always mention, so that's why I don't know if I actually said it or not. I did say something incredibly similar, but to reframe the sentence, to start from the very basics is good actually. It's okay. Yeah, it's somewhat different from what I said before. There is something beautiful about the way in which we talk about the notion of learning, acquiring information nowadays. If one of the best ways to keep anyone from doing stuff is by shaming them. And the capacity to be shamed away from ever getting to from ever acquiring any piece of knowledge is the most amazing part of this. To believe that, yeah, you have only this amount of time to get some things. I don't know, if you never learned about basic mathematics when you were 5, arithmetics when you were 12, and trigonometry when you were 15, then you are not only cooked, you are absolutely destroyed. You should never try again because it's too late for you to try. Something like same with the process of maturating as a human being, you know? I have to slowly evolve and I have to slowly keep on progressing through the knowledge that I obtain and through the things that I get to see and whatnot. The way in which it is, I wouldn't say visualized, in which it is presented, and the way in which those notions affect how we explore knowledge ourselves is utterly damaging. To believe that, only during these points of life, information is accessible to you is bad. There are, but are you saying that nothing is constrained by time? Unavoidably. Wow, you need an example. If you do not learn how to breathe the very first moment of your life, you are going to die. You want an example of something that is absolutely true of that kind? Yeah, there are moments in which you needed to learn all the stuff, and if you don't do so, then it's absolutely over. But for the abstract notions, for things that require far more imagination itself, it's far less about the quote-unquote proper time and just about, once again, the proper foundations for acquiring it and the proper capacity to see what constitutes the piece of information that you're trying to get. It's not so much about doing so in time, it's just about getting there willingly. The notion is I am an absolute advocate for even 80-year-old people trying to learn. It's numbers in that kind of, in that sense, are meaningless sometimes. The etiquettes put on stuff like, you know what, if you're too young, you are incapable of learning out this stuff. If you're too old, you will never get this stuff. It's harmful, and it was based on something that we used to think was true. It doesn't mean that it is eternally correct. It doesn't mean that it is the only thing that is right. The way in which we talk about this thing, the way in which we associate with notions of this sort about, you know what, you only have this amount of time to learn. You have only this amount of time to be capable of processing stuff. Is damaging to us, and to be capable of moving from that perspective onto one that allows the person to progress no matter their position is, I will say, unavoidably far more useful. And I don't know, perhaps usefulness is damaging or insulting to other people, but yeah, I am happy if people are capable of actually trying. Once again, or I didn't even say it, perhaps, the whole aspect of sometimes what matters the most is trying in itself. I said before in terms of, you get presented with the notion that you are going to be incapable of understanding something. Information is going to be inaccessible for you no matter how hard you try. Is it absolutely true? No. It's only a method utilized without blaming anyone, in a way in which it ends up damaging your capacities, as long as you take that piece of information as if it was the only correct thing here. Sometimes the capacities that we possess about doing stuff relies far more on the willingness that we have to even try stuff, you know? It's my preconceived notions are only that, preconceived. They are not absolutely right. If every single thing that I thought about was correct, if every single preconceived notion was absolutely right, life would be entirely different. And that is not, Mike, every single person will be on that same position. It's incredibly annoying, once again, to see how much in the search of information, in the objective, in the goal of trying to go towards something, that allows us to understand that this world, we still have such a barricade to deal with, such as the preconceptions that we carry with us, which in the end are utterly hurtful for the process of acquiring anything new, anything different, anything capable of modifying the way in which we exist, you know? But I don't know, I guess the real theory is that so long as the person is capable of continuously trying, they can reach proper, more developed stages of knowledge, of acquisitions of information that allow them to then progress onto even further stages. And okay, I have absolutely ignored this much. There is also something wonderful about in itself the meta discussion of information in terms of yeah, you're trying to talk about it to other people. Some things are absolutely obscure, like some things only you will be capable of getting, and no matter how hard you try, you will never be capable of sharing them with anyone else. You will have to, in a way, the language most utilizes, you will have to live with the weight of your knowledge by yourself. There is no way for anyone else to ever get what you're talking about. That is, I wouldn't call it exactly a preconception. It's a different sort of notion of, yeah, you know what? This is your problem, and no one else will be capable of dealing with it. This is the thing that you will have to carry with yourself. There is no other thing to communicate outside, and there is no one that will ever be capable of getting what you're talking about. In a very sad reality, it's not so much of an impossibility to actually talk out stuff in itself, to be capable of communicating things. To do so effectively is just to have the capacity. I try to transmit my piece of information to you, I see how you react, and based on that, you have the capacity to say, yeah, I should correct in this way, I should correct in this other way. But to transmit information is based first and foremost on the act of observing also how the very same information which you are giving out is being received. There are many other layers under that in the current world of, yeah, we live all here in our own bubbles, comprised only of ourselves and the virtual screen and whatnot. Unavoidably, that might to some degree be factually correct. Unavoidably, I am presenting myself through a screen. You might as well be consuming that through a screen too. But it doesn't mean that it is yes, just because of that. Now there is no more transmission of information whatsoever. No. To be capable of understanding the limitations of the places in which we find ourselves inhabiting doesn't mean that there is an impossibility entirely of things. To be capable of knowing what limits you is to also see what allows you still to keep on functioning and doing the things that you want, and to remain in such a tiny position, in such a diminished and totally negated position of action, is to harm your own efforts. And it doesn't get talked out enough, because to some degree it's hard to say, yeah, you know what, I am once again being my own hindrance, being my own worst enemy. But I feel like it is in most cases true that, yeah, I carry with me these things that other people say. I never judged what was being expressed, and because I did so, I completely ignored that in the end I might as well have also harmed what I ended up achieving. Sometimes not everything that I think about is true. Not every factually correct information is hard to distinguish from the notions that we are capable of conceiving within ourselves, because there is that tendency to believe what you think, you know? You wouldn't think of yourself as somebody crazy, but sometimes it's useful to also be capable of understanding that, yeah, no matter how much we are ourselves, it is not everything that we think out true. So, from that point onwards, it becomes a little bit more possible to navigate the whole landscape of, yeah, perhaps I can see things a little bit more clearly, perhaps I can make a little bit more sense of what I am exploring, perhaps I can try to make a clearer picture out of what I am trying to get. And yeah, it's all of that. I don't know. Once again, circling back to the other notion. And it's incredibly annoying still to think that, yeah, you know what? You will need 20 years to get something. Some pieces of information are only accessible only after such long enough developments. Truly, is that something to get angry about? I am going to utilize my energies on remaining bitter about the reality that, yeah, information in itself is complicated to get because it just requires a lot of labor rather than to accept if I really care about this thing, I might as well start working on that. Who knows? Once again, once most important part on all of that thing, based on what I already mentioned before, sometimes you're going to be told the stuff, and sometimes people are going to tell you, yeah, it's going to take you decades of your life to get some notions. Is that really the case? Why don't we try for ourselves a little bit more? As much as we like to think that other people are right, as much as we try to say that some things are complicated, the reality is that not everything in this world is incredibly incomprehensible and unobtainable for others. In itself, there is a tendency to believe that everyone else will go through the same experiences as us, but sometimes, for example, it took me a good while to get some particular authors, but it wasn't at all related with the author. The problem was mine because I distracted myself with other things, because I took weeks to continue actually studying what was being said. Am I going to be honest enough with myself whenever I talk with someone else and tell them, yeah, you're interested in exploring this author, you want to get the notion that they are talking about, and say, I think you can do it based on my previous experience, discounting every other issue that I had. Perhaps you are going to take just a week, or am I going to rather go for the faster route? Okay, in total it took me 3 months because I barely studied, because I barely wanted to actually read the books, because I barely did the show throughout those 3 months. If I say that, nobody will realize what am I actually saying. Not even I myself have to realize what I am actually saying. I can simply say, yeah, you know what, you're trying to get this notion, it's going to take you 3 months. Wow. And everyone claps and everyone stays happy about it. And many such cases happen with those other things of, yeah, some authors are going to take you 20 years. Sometimes not. Actually, sometimes you can actually get things as long as you keep on trying by yourself for the sake of actually accessing that knowledge. Issue is to do that. Issue is to have the willingness to actually push through and see it happen. It's the degree of resistance, the degree of... There is something that I despise quite a lot. When you talk about acquiring newer, even more complicated pieces of information, something wonderful gets mentioned very often by those who are doing the whole process, but I get tired. Isn't getting tired a fundamental part of the process? Isn't the realization that because you are trying in itself to obtain what you are looking for, and that you are slowly working through the notions so that the object of your desire is finally becoming slowly accessible to you, and you're finally, with enough effort, acquiring it, what you're actually looking for, what's the point of saying, yeah, you know what, you are getting tired, you should not at all try again. Trying at all is meaningless, because information, once again, if it doesn't appear out of nowhere in front of you, if you don't get it in an instant with the clap of your hands, you are never going to get it. But I have my life to live. I have my everything else to do. I have a work. I have a family. I have so many other responsibilities. Wonderful enough. I am not the person who you should be looking at for the necessity of organization in your existence, so that you can dedicate a little bit of it to do something about acquiring such things. I am not the person that you should be asking for in terms of, yeah, I am trying to get something, and I know that I have also these other things to deal with. Can I work it in any way out to be capable of finally inserting a little bit of time to slowly work through this desire of mine, through this interest of mine? Can I finally get this piece of information? It might take me 3 weeks, because I only have 1 hour every 3 days, but I can do that, and I can dedicate myself to that, and I will hope that I get to do that, and perhaps if I keep myself at it, I might finally reach somewhere. It's annoying to see that notion of, yeah, you know what, you don't have to try. Information, if it takes you more than 10 minutes to learn, it's meaningless. If you're not a prodigy at learning, if you don't read it once and instantaneously absorb the notion, you did something wrong. It's incredible, the toxic culture of, yeah, everyone here has to be special in what they do. If you're not a proficient person in your field, if you're trying to actually obtain information of any kind, but you are not lightning fast in terms of its absorption, you are wrong. You are now incorrect about it, and you are wasting your efforts. Truly, that's a healthy mentality to have. You're going to tell me that it is something natural to do, to go through the process of learning something and go through the process of trying to process things itself. In that way, that trying to see things for what they are, if it isn't an instantaneous action, it's not worth doing. It's incredibly crazy to think like that. And sadly, so far, the world still relies on many older schemes and many older methods, and sadly, in the very same process of acquiring any piece of information, it is necessary to waste hours of life, to waste decades, because sometimes it can happen that we might as well take as much. And once again, I tell you that from my point of view. Maybe you try it and you find out, things are understandable. Maybe other people told me that it wasn't going to actually be understandable. Maybe other people gave me the impression that this thing was completely unreachable. But in reality, it was just about trying to get it. And when I did try, I found out for myself. And okay, I am an honest person. I can see that I don't get it, but I can also see why exactly I do not get it. I can start working on the issue. Some pieces of information are impossible to access, even if I am trying incredibly hard, but I also possess an intelligence, a working intelligence with myself that can allow me to dissect what I am seeing, to see that, once again, things are connected to others. What is the thing that connects to the piece of information that I am currently incapable of exploring, that I am not capable of getting to right now? I can do the work of getting to those other things so that I can finally reach this later stage on the development of different theories so that I can finally make sense out of what is being talked about. I don't know, man. Sometimes the human is the wolf of the human. No, not really. It's just that for the sake of making our lives easier, it also happens that sometimes we forget that it isn't really that helpful for me to tell you that, no, yeah, you know what? These authors are bad. They make no sense whatsoever. You want, okay, what the fuck are you talking about, brother? Let me give you an example. Have you heard about this guy named Hegel? When you try to read Hegel, you actually can slowly get through his text. But do you know what you also find out when other people talk about Hegel? Oh no, yeah, he's the most complicated author because he wrote so much. It is impossible to get through his theory. It is impossible to get through everything. Am I really going to have an issue, or is your issue being transmitted to me? Is your problem being projected on me? Is your incapacity to actually explore the thing being bestowed upon my person? Because sometimes I think that I am not that personally incapable, utterly, physically, totally incapable of doing anything for myself. Sometimes it's not really that impossible to achieve the things, but if I decide to stay in that stage of, yeah, you know what? This person is telling me that I'm going to have difficulties. I will believe them. And I never moved past that point. I will then find out 50 years later, when I finally get tired of hearing to those other voices, that, perhaps I will try it today. Cannot be. Is it really that impossible? Wow, no way. And once I try it out, I finally find out that it wasn't really that impossible. That life maybe was worth living instead of hearing what it might actually be from other people, you know? Whatever. I need to calm down. That's my current point, actually. So yeah, I don't know. Guess when? So far productive is, and I don't know. It's yeah. Okay, there was something else. I have still yet to mention that. There is something wonderful. And another thing, there is this whole other notion also of, but nothing is actually interesting. Who is actually speaking? What the fuck? With all sincerity, with the utmost love in my heart, have you actually tried to explore anything? Or is it the contrarian view of, yeah, no, nothing is worth my time. There is nothing that this world can offer me. Have you truly tried to see what is out there? I guarantee you that there will be something that catches your attention, the mood in which you try to read about the stuff. The issue is, you have the capacity to admit that there are things that catch your eye sometimes. I don't know. What would be a controversial example? Oh no, I have dedicated my entire life to the study of this one field, to becoming a very apt. What was there is a real life example. There was this guy who was incredibly proficient at maths, and at the knowledge of math, he processed the information of mathematical equations incredibly well. He was like one of the most capable human beings of our era, and he decided to give up on that. Why? Because sometimes you can realize also that the things that you know about don't matter at all for you, don't mean anything whatsoever, and that you might as well have the possibility of finding out what you actually care about. I don't enjoy acquiring information. Truly, nothing whatsoever satisfies you. I can guarantee you that there is something that you have either ignored or not explored yet, or decided to call inappropriate for you to explore, because there is so much stuff out there available. There are God, the amount of studies that bore me to death, but that for other people are the most interesting things to read about. Yet another study about how some monkey behaves and how some rat reacts to this new kind of drug. For me, it's absolutely boring, but for you, might as well be the most wonderful thing out there. Information is incredibly subjected to the eye of the beholder. It's also about wandering out there and seeing what catches your eye. I can very easily, as much as other people say to me, yeah, this thing is so hard, without I myself ever knowing if it truly is hard or not, I can form such a good judgment about how boring everything is without ever trying it, because what's the sad reality? There is way too much. There are so many things to try to see. Unavoidably, unsurprisingly, people will say, yeah, I don't know if I really want to see what is out there. I don't really know if I want to check out what might be available out there. Sometimes it can happen. Sometimes you can find out about this stuff. Sometimes you can decide to give it a try. But unless you do, unless you finally give it a try, it's kind of impossible to reach any conclusion. It's kind of impossible to know what you are really like if you haven't really tried. And okay, parenthesis or stop there for a second, because you also say, yeah, if you haven't tried, I already tried so much and I haven't liked anything. I have spent 40 years of my life exploring stuff, and all of it was so meaningless. There was nothing that captured my life, that had me captivated, that I wanted to keep on reading about. Information in the end is so meaningless. There is nothing that matters. There is nothing that I want to learn about. Okay, understandable. I can also say that I have spent a good portion of my life reading about something, but even then, I haven't even scratched the surface of knowledge of such a tiny field as the one that I try to learn about sometimes. It's surprisingly vast, the amount of knowledge. It's, once again, from my human position, I can easily call petabytes of information available unimportant, but to actually understand, to be capable of picturing just how many things are out there available to us, how much information that might as well represent something of importance to you, something capable of giving joy to you out there, is impossible to put in proper words, impossible to figure out, to picture in any way. There is almost an infinite potential for anyone to find many, many, many things that catch their interest. The issue is to keep on doing so after having failed once, twice, and again and again and again. It's the whole problem. Very same thing as what I mentioned before. When you're trying to learn something and you realize that you are not getting the point, you keep on trying until you finally get it. To keep on trying until you finally find some piece of information that catches your eye, some field of knowledge that is worth your interest, is annoying, but the incapacity to sit with that annoyance and to work through that, to finally reach the end point of saying, yeah, this thing was worth it actually. I now have something that allows me to keep on going. I now have something that I can do. I now have something that I like doing. Is not as impossible. It's not as damaging. We like to make it look like it is going to be the worst, but in reality, some things are not as absolutely hurtful as we like to picture them, you know? I don't know. I think I don't really have anything else to say. I am happy. I am fulfilled, yeah. I just want you to read something. To read whatever you want, but read something. For the love of God, read something. There is so much out there. You have no clue how beautiful it is to actually read something with interest. It's... Let me make... Okay, no. I say I am done. I am not done. I am just trying to not continuously rage for the whole night. But there is yet another piece here. There is something that I also despise entirely. And that is... Oh yeah. But only between the field of information. I mentioned that very, very, very early. There is that semi-distinction between information with a major I and information with a capital and non-capital information, basically. The concept of major and minor, or important and non-important, the bigger and tinier things. And the whole aspect of sometimes there are only tiny things that are going to pique your interest. On one hand, it is absolutely fine for that to be the case, as long as something keeps you afloat to some degree. That works for me. I don't care what it is, just have something. But on the other hand, even more, in the very same line of what I mentioned already, of yeah, there is nothing on the scientific field that catches my interest. Even then, I would beg you to reconsider. There are so many things, there is so much science out there, there are so many possibilities, there is so much stuff to try to understand, to consider, to try to explore. It's surprising, it's beautiful even, and it's incredibly sad to see how normalized it is that yeah, this thing doesn't matter, this thing will lead to nothing, and this thing that you are trying to understand, that you are trying to explore, is going to lead you to nothing. It's astounding to see how much we have made it look like it is fine. I would say that it is not the case at all. That there are, even if they are complicated, once again, things can become understandable once we keep trying for long enough. The issue is to have the patience to do so, to have the willingness to keep on moving forward, despite all the anger that generates to know that, oh my god, I have been reading the same page 5 times in a row and I don't get the concept yet. What the fuck are we talking about? What are we even trying to discuss? What is even the point of what I am seeing? Sometimes it can happen, but it's the frustration itself, even in the major sciences, can be overcome, and notions can be reached, man. It's annoying to see how little that gets mentioned, how much everything is about, yeah, you know what? You don't like the book that you picked up, give up. You don't like the literature piece that you grabbed, give up. No, man, sometimes it's not about giving up. Sometimes it's not about actually saying, yeah, I can't deal with this anymore. To be capable of doing a tactical retreat, as they will call it, is not the same as to absolutely leave everything behind and never look back, you know? But yeah, no, I guess for sure I am done. I have nothing else to really add. I am absolutely done. So yeah, it was great enough, I guess. But no more text to add to this cool discussion about information, I guess. So yeah, as always, I guess, thank you for everything. It was very good and very informative, haha. You understand the joke? Ha. But yeah, have a good night, good evening, good morning, whatever. Have a good one, basically. And yeah, take care. See you soon. Or next time, whenever it is. And even if we don't get to see ourselves next time. Thanks for everything, for the time, for the attention, for everything. take care, and yeah, I don't know, learn stuff, acquire information, explore the world, because it is as vast as what you can imagine tenfold. So go ahead and do something for yourself of that sort also, because you deserve it, yes. So yeah, anyway, good night. Tonight we're done, and even if we don't get to see ourselves, it was wonderful enough. Bye.